Hey guys, what's up? RossDunneIE. Muhammad Ali is dead, and I don't care. Now, before you go ahead and jump down my throat about not caring about this obviously superior athlete's death, let me lay out for you why I don't care. It's come to my attention that even before people like me, i.e. white people, were allowed to chime in with our message of condolences, there have been people online, and plenty of them, making sure to shut white people specifically out of sharing their grief and sadness at the passing of what is, unquestionably, one of the greatest sporting heroes of all time. But I've been told not to bother, as I can claim no ownership or grief or sadness about the passing of the man, so I've decided I simply won't. So I'll say it again. I don't care that Muhammad Ali is dead, and if we're taught to follow the narrative of certain corners of the regressive left, including some voices inside Black Lives Matter, if you're white, you shouldn't care either. Now, this is a new kind of paradoxical segregation which is increasingly growing in strength online, where social and ethnic minority groups both claim to want a greater participation or at least a greater share of the pie of society, yet simply don't want to continue to participate in its ongoing conversations, or at least they want to place their conversations from their own perspective and narratives as greater or more important than the conversations or the general hustle and bustle of the great social forum that is the internet. These are groups that want no comment or no criticism of their collective groupthink and simply want knees bent and mouths shut on any subject which they believe others should not necessarily participate in. In some ways, I can kind of understand this rebellion for what it is. Where people in social and ethnic minority positions in history were given the smallest voice, it's understandable that these people now should have voices, and undeniably their positions are inherently disadvantaged, and they should be afforded louder voices nonetheless. However, for as loud as their voices should be, they should not, under any circumstances, be deafening voices or voices which seek to drown out others and their participation too. The real mental challenge for me here is attempting to divine the mental gymnastics these people have to conduct in order to spin what is an overwhelming show of support and positivity for an individual like Muhammad Ali into obvious, hateful, negative comments. To quote one statement, perhaps paraphrased, Muhammad Ali is one Muslim you'll celebrate, but naturally you hate all other Muslims. This statement is obviously laced with nothing but spite and comes from the sort of people who, during the Paris attacks, were quick to jump onto Facebook and immediately defend the attackers and pre-prepare for the eventual hate crimes which never came towards the Muslim minority in Paris. Because for as much as this narrative of hatred relies on the obvious idea that the West is a cathedral of evil, the truth is that it isn't. People are far too quick to associate Western people with actions of a very specific minority wing of Western politics, and that is war hawks, for who, at least for the last century or so, have generally had no public support, and even if there is support, it quickly evaporates after the brutal realities of violence are brought home to people, and they're reminded through that imagery and the ticking of their moral clocks that war and violence is obviously wrong, and that hatred is also wrong. People are, at times, so desperate to make the West seem as vitriolic and evil as its enemies, and it is, ironically, one of the West's greatest strengths. Our ability to judge ourselves by the same standards that we judge our moral enemies, and we often judge ourselves a little bit too much, much harder, as evidenced by the nearly endless number of people who are quick to defend the values and ideologies of people who are willing to do violence against us. And in all honesty, this does nothing more than reinforce what is already self-evident, that Western values are unquestionably superior to all other cultural values around the globe. Now, you can try and dig around for an argument against this statement, and I wouldn't blame you, because it's a pretty strong one. But the minute you bring a comparison in from an external entity to the conversation, your argument quickly evaporates, so the West has nothing to compare itself other than to its own history. Now, I've wandered off on what may seem like a tangent, but I find the thought highly crucial to the rights of individuals who immediately deny the vast majority of Western society's right to celebrate and elevate a man who was once under its boot heel. The life and times of Muhammad Ali are a testament to the changing and ultimately more graceful face of Western society. We can look back on what we did to him with shame, but we can look back at how we elevated him and ourselves with an incredible amount of joy and pride. And the fact that we do that ultimately destroys the argument of irrational regressives. The West is not the same place it was 50 years ago, and it will not be in the same place 50 years from now. So who knows? Maybe I should take a little bit of that grief over Muhammad Ali's death for myself. I'm Ross Dunn. Peace.